This is Doleo, an original thriller fiction podcast presented in serialized format, a chapter at a time. Written by Jared Canton, narrated by Joshua Canton, a SteadyChaos production. Previously on Doleo.
You really want me to get myself killed? That's the only way me helping you ends. I'm not going to force you to testify. I couldn't handle more innocent blood on my hands, and the kid was right. We couldn't protect him, inside or outside of jail. I just need a place to start. I could see the wheels spinning. He was considering the idea. How much of a start? I need a gang, a name, and a physical description, and I need some way to be certain you're not lying. He thought about it for a moment, looked around the room, maybe for a second camera. Yo, this ain't no trick? It isn't. How can I be sure? Beyond me giving you my word, you can't. Same way I can't be sure you're not just gonna lie to me. I can tell you there'll be consequences if you do, but I can't be certain you still won't. He was definitely scared, and although it went against everything I had worked for the past several years, I had to use it to my advantage. My brother was trying to get out. Of what? He was running opioids for the blood struggles. It ain't their operation, but they provide muscle. I've heard of them. They had made regular appearances on the criminal docket over the past several years. My brother told him he was out. They shot him on the front steps. Latrell's face was stone still. I imagined he wanted to break down, but knew he'd never do it in my presence. I saw the whole thing. Saw the driver, the passenger, and I knew both of them. They ate my mom's cooking before. Sat at my fucking kitchen table. Been at my motherfucking home. Names? I only knew them by Jermaine and Rodney. Do you know where they live? There's an apartment complex in Roxbury. Bunch of them bank up there. How do I know you're telling me the truth? Your blood struggles tattoo every hit in the back of their neck. It's a barcode. Each line is a kill. The wider the bar, the bigger your rep. They'll each have fresh tats. I looked at him, a hint of lingering doubt in my mind. You don't believe me? He looked angry, almost surprised, as if I owed him a certain level of respect that I had betrayed. Go to the morgue. My brother had the mark. 2 lines in his barcode by the time he got out. You know who else has had one? Who? Paul fucking Friedman. That Paul Friedman. He was running that stuff at local colleges. College dropout. White boy. Cheap labor. Cops don't look twice at a guy like that. Check his neck. What's left of it. Rumor has it he was getting deep. Might have had his own tat. Episode 16. Warranted. When I got home that night, it looked as if Dad's wheelchair had spun itself into a twister and tossed my belongings around the room like shattered wood from some poorly built barn in Oklahoma. My dad sat still, planted firmly in the center of the debris. Around him were clothes, dishes, pillows, couch cushions, and my once wall-mounted LED, now scattered in hundreds of glass shards along the wood floor. "Who did this?" I demanded. Dad said nothing, just sat there, his hands in his hair. He looked terrified, as if he had narrowly escaped the clutches of death. "Who did this, Dad?" I asked again. "Detective Ross." It made sense. The police often employed tactics of intimidation, including sanctioned vandalism. They could have searched my place with a level of professional courtesy. They could have respected my things, but if they had, maybe I wouldn't develop that healthy fear and respect that could lead me to slip up. They did this to send a message, to push, remind me I'm just another person of interest to them. But they weren't dealing with a purse snatcher or a petty larcenist. I had been on the right side of the law long enough to understand the wrong side of it. Did he find what he was looking for? I don't know. What was he looking for? Dad asked with the distinct tone of an angry parent. I sighed. It wasn't like me to be so indecisive, but I had been very indecisive with one of the most important issues to ever invade my life. The evidence. What to do with the knife and jacket of the man I had killed. I had thought about ditching the knife that night, but once I had grabbed it in the jacket pocket, it had my prints on it. While both I and the imaginary vigilante were chasing the perp, how would he have had time to clean and dump the knife? The simple answer, he wouldn't. So while James, still today, lay in a coma, the man I had accused of stabbing him was dead, with no murder weapon on him. On top of that, until this moment, I had possession of both the knife and the jacket. I had hidden them in a secret safe compartment in the walk-in closet attached to my master bedroom. The question now is, were they still there? I took off for the closet in a panic. I arrived to an enormous pile of books, clothes and shoes, belts and ties, all piled high in the center of the closet. Panic set in, a palpable thumping in my chest, like a drum, like a hard, steady knock on my rib cage, cascaded waves throughout my body. It almost hurt, I think. I breathed deeply, as if doing so would suppress the loss of control, the dread that had taken over me. It didn't, not even close. I reached down for the panel that covered the secret compartment. It simply wasn't there. The face of my safe stared at me, a glaring consequence of my choices over the past few weeks. The edge of the safe door where the latch fastened was bent slightly, as if pried open. I pulled the door back, and the safe was empty. No jacket, no knife, no hope. I pawed at my face awkwardly with my hand. It was moist. I was actually sweating. Ross had won. It was over before it could even begin. Looking for these? Dad's voice pulled me back to the present and away from a series of all-consuming dreadful thoughts. I turned to face him, and he was postured like Jesus on the cross, only seated, with both arms out straight at his sides. In one hand was the jacket, in the other, the knife. His head was tilted slightly, the physical embodiment of, "I saved your ass." He had let me suffer just a touch, perhaps to teach me a lesson. "Oh, Jesus!" I let the words leak from my mouth in a breath. "How?" was all I could muster to follow it. "I was up the night you hid them in there. I figured if they were on your case, they'd be safer in my room, with everything else." "Everything else?" "Follow me." Dad's chair pivoted and rolled out of my room and into the hall. When he arrived at his room, boxes stacked along the far back wall as high as an average man is tall. The room was not ransacked like the rest of the house. It was dark and tidy, as he always kept it. "How did you—" "Come on, counselor. Any warrant they had would cover the common living areas and your private areas. But I'm a legal tenant. I don't live in your home. I rent a private space in your home, so I have a reasonable expectation of privacy here." "That's absolutely right," I said. I had no idea my dad was so fluent in civil liberties. A warrant must be specific. They could search my part of the residence because they had suspected me of a crime. They couldn't search my dad's private areas, thankfully. I left my door closed and showed them our lease. "I'm glad you forced me to charge you rent." "That's 'cause Dad is always friggin' right," he said. "What's the rest of this stuff?" "Before we go over that, we need to discuss this journey we're embarking upon." I nodded. "You need to keep me in the loop, Ryder. What if I hadn't moved the evidence? You'd be visiting me at MCI Cedar Junction Prison. Or worse. You can inform the doctor on a need-to-know basis, but I just flat-out need to know, period." "I get it. This is new to me, too. I know. You can do this, and I can help you any way I can, but we need to start thinking ahead of these things. If we're going to be proactive, we have to be proactive on everything." "The boxes, Dad." "Ah, yes, the boxes. Old Dad can still get things done when he has to." "What's in them?" I tried not to sound too overeager. "Those boxes are your vigilante." He grabbed the end of a smaller box and tossed it to me one-handed. I flipped the lid off the top and pulled out a thin sheet of black metal formed to fit squarely over my chest and upper abdomen. "Front ceramic rifle plate, level 3. That'll handle almost any handgun on the streets. Leaves your lower torso unprotected in a few areas, but handles the major organs." "Leaves the torso unprotected?" I parroted back with concern. That's when he tossed the second box over. "ABA bulletproof vest, primarily for small arms. No knife penetration prevention, but this should help you make up for some of the ceramic rifle plate's shortcomings." "Shortcomings?" "Ryder, if you're going into this expecting to get shot, maybe we should reconsider. This stuff is a precaution, not an invitation to stop bullets with your body." I threw on the vest and inserted the plate. The plate was restrictive and prevented my body from fully crunching at the waist. One thing was certain, I wouldn't be delivering any cannonballs into swimming pools with it on. The vest itself, however, was surprisingly pliable, almost unnoticeable. The third box flew my way and hit my chest plate with a clank. Spear tactical goggles, shatterproof lenses. They won't take a bullet, but they'll take a blunt object's force, and they'll conceal your identity. I remember the first pair of goggles you gave me. So do I, he said. A glimmer of nostalgia flashed in his anxious eyes as he reached for the next box. Ridge Storm black quarter boots. I opened them and flipped them upside down. We're gonna have to wear this tread down. Need them to match these. I flipped over my dress shoes. I left a print at the scene. Our vigilante has to somewhat match that print. Dad moved effortlessly onto the next box. His arms were amazingly strong for his age and condition. Tactical long-sleeve mock, mask, socks, tactical slim-fit pants with cargo pockets, and tactical accessory belt. How did you get all this stuff here? I still have my sources, Dad said with a wry smile. And it can't be traced back to us? To anybody that looks, it's going to appear as if we just bought a new TV or two to make up for the one that Detective Ross's crew smashed. Perfect. I walked over to the mirror in Dad's bathroom. I looked like the bastard child of a ninja SWAT love affair. Most of the materials were form-fitting, including the mask, which was a thick polyester material that possessed the unique qualities of spandex. It flexed comfortably around my head and jaw, opening only at my eyes, where the low-profile goggles tucked tightly to my face. The tint of the goggles was a dark metallic, reflective, and in the mirror I could see myself inside the reflection of my goggles. The mirror and goggles reflected onto one another, cascading an endless image into both. My neck was fully covered by the base of the mask and the opening of the mock, which overlapped each other just enough to layer securely. The mock was covered by a sleek, bulletproof vest, not bulky like those police wear over their uniforms. At my chest was the bulletproof plate that, combined with the vest, would allow me to take point-blank handgun rounds, but as Dad had said, nothing larger with any degree of certainty. The mock was long-sleeved, and from what Dad described, warm. It reached my wrists, ending where my gloves began. The gloves were knife-resistant, and a bit like the chainmail armor of the distant past, only lighter, more pliable. My pants were basic polyester and spandex hybrids with cargo pockets, fastened by a utility belt that, as of this moment, was free from attachments or tools. The pants ran long and met seamlessly with quarter boots that were black, light, flexible, and comfortable. I looked legitimate, which had been the best I dared hope for. More importantly, the outfit felt right, comfortable, relatively functional. I sequenced through a few blocks and strikes, and the uniform flowed with my body, hugged its actions. There's one more. Dad hesitantly handed me a heavy box. And I know what you're going to say, but if we're going to go through all this trouble not to lose you to prison, then I'm not going to lose you in another way. He cleared his throat and poorly concealed his face as a tear streaked his cheek. As I opened the box, he began, "It's a Glock 17 with suppressor and M3 light. I know how you feel about guns, and I hope you don't have to use it, but if you need it, I want you to have the option. I need you to have the option." I threaded the holster and gun into my tactical belt, and dragged it along the belt until it reached my right hip. I nodded, didn't say a word. If my dad, after what had happened to him, could buy a gun for me to protect myself, then I could certainly do him the favor of at least carrying it. "You come up with a name yet?" It was the last step in this becoming real, for both of us. For this to work, people need to know about this persona, this vigilante, about you. He looked at the masked man before him. I saw no less pride in his face today than I had the day I graduated from law school. Yeah. There was a hesitation that I couldn't really explain, and it blocked the word behind my lips. I knew he'd understand, but I didn't want to send the wrong message, even if for only a minute before I could explain. "Doleo," I revealed. "You think that's a good idea, son? Ross digs deep enough, he'll find some ties between Ryder Daniels and that name. I'm sure it needs to mean something to me. And what does that name mean to you?" It was a testy response, contaminated with jealousy. If I didn't have CIPA, that would have been my last name. that would have been my family. Dad nodded. He looked hurt. Hurt that I had chosen a name that didn't include him, that lent preference to the family that had abandoned me, as he never would. "But how's it fit?" he asked, the hurt look replaced by the confusion in his voice. This was where he'd see. It meant more, much more. When I created the story of this vigilante, I told Ross he had shouted aquitus at me. It's Latin for justice. Doleo is Latin too. It means to suffer, feel pain. Ironic, Dad said. Exactly. I may not be able to feel pain, but maybe I can serve some up. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed Doleo, please share us with your friends and family, and join our Facebook group at Doleo Podcast so you can interact with the creators. Happy holidays to all, and thanks for sticking with us.